Let us move now to the United States, and because this is important. We see, if we spoke in January, the election.
Well, we spoke on Facebook Messenger.
We did, but and at that time,
because we're friends, not just interviewees.
Yeah, well, I'm honored. The election of Donald Trump and pretty much continuation of the policy that he brought was certain, like 99%.
I don't think so. I think that the economy was strong pre-COVID, but the left thought that Trump. The polling is such nonsense, especially in the U.S. It suffers from Tory effect, and we'll get into it in a few minutes about the numbers that exist right now in the U.S. But there was a competitive Democratic primary season with quite a few candidates that might have captured the attention and energy of the American left, center left to far left. And what happened was none of them were viable enough for the Democratic establishment. They were too radical for the Democratic establishment. Bernie Sanders was probably going to be a front runner, and he's a full-on communist. He honeymooned in Moscow and Cuba and the Sandinistas he was a big proponent of, and Venezuela. I mean, this is a guy who really does believe Das Kapital and a critique of political economy, Marxist pablum and academic theory. And he was probably going to capture a lot of the youthful energy because the American far left is overt Marxist. And the Democratic establishment, which is really filled with corporatist whores, people that stand for very little beyond their own pocketbook, and then sell social justice, sell high-minded ideology to what their idiot followers, he was a threat to them. So they needed to clear out the field a little. Elizabeth Warren, same thing. They need to clear out the field a little, so they coordinated a successful bid for Joe Biden, who's one of their guys. He's been in D.C. halls of power for almost 50 years. Multi-term senator, three-time presidential aspirant in the past. And they had to do a backroom deal to knock out the two others that might have given him a run, Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg. They wanted a guy they could control. This was a guy who captured no imagination. Everyone can see he's outwardly senile. He cannot get a sentence together. There's all sorts of crony corruption that everyone knows about with his son, with his brother, with his daughter. I mean, it's just we could write books. In fact, one of my mentors Peter Schweitzer, has written books about Biden family corruption, and there's more coming. He's got a new movie out this week, a documentary that you can get on YouTube about Biden family corruption. It's going to be great. Much like Clinton Cash, we distributed in 2016, and you were very helpful in me getting that air, which I appreciate. So they orchestrated a Biden nomination, and this does not inspire much hope. This was a guy who couldn't win primaries on his own. He was put together with Kamala Harris, a hard left activist, attorney general, and then senator of California, who slept her way into politics. This also does not inspire a lot of confidence. And she could not win a primary either. She was forced to drop out by the reality of that situation, that she was not popular on a nationwide level as she is in California. It's like the voters in Villanov, what's popular for them is not so popular in Łomża or Kielce or many other places where there are real people with real concerns, not out of touch elitists who are happy when the technocrats take over because they are the technocrats and they're friends of the technocrats. So I don't think Trump was 100% assured. I thought he would, because I do believe that there's a huge pocket of silent majority that has now been created by the Bannon-Trump stratagem of 2015-16. This is what Bannon taught Trump was, you're not a classical Republican, you're not a Democrat, you are a hybrid, a populist economic nationalist that is concerned with the workers, with the working class people, with the miners in Pennsylvania and the frackers, with the auto workers in Ohio and Michigan and the Wisconsin dairy farmers and the beet farmers and iron ore miners in Minnesota. And that's why the Rust Belt was where Trump won, because he broke down the right-left divide and the FDR Union Democrats became Republicans. It wasn't that they left the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left them because the Democratic Party went from a union working class party from FDR for the next following 60 years to a party of transgender bathroom debate and the party of progressive radicals like Elizabeth Warren and even Bernie Sanders. So this was interesting the way Trump broke this down, and I believe that he was very well positioned because of the pocketbook issues and the security issues that are so important to American workers, which are still the mass of our popular demographic. And that is, Wages. Wages grew more than they ever have. Household income was the highest it's ever been. Joblessness was the lowest. Minority joblessness, Hispanic and Black, was the lowest. So he was making a whole new tent based on economic nationalism and populism, and it resonated with the people, and the elite absolutely hated it because they're the anti-populist. They're the technocratic elite. On the spectrum of political affiliation, on a pragmatic level, you've got populists and the will of the people, and you've got technocratic elites who look to subvert the will of the people because they have a different priority and triage system of confederating powers to centralize them to their own interests, social justice, race to the bottom in labor costs. And this is an American right thing that has been very well integrated with the lefty elite, which is a race to the bottom in labor costs is good for the elite because they're corporatists, because they're the ones who run the big corporations. So when you've got open borders, especially in the American southern border, that degrades wages for the national working class. And so the populists argue against it. The technocratic elites of the left and the right are for it. And this is what Trump understood, what Bannon understood, and this is a big deal. The border issue is also key to one of the most important voting demographics, which is Hispanics. In 2016, you had an election that hinged on the Democrat Union Rust Belt, the FDR Dems we talked about in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Minnesota. He only lost by a point, a very progressive state, but with a heavy working class, industrial class. So these are states he's going to win by massive margins now. But the hinge point is not just that region in 2020. It's, in my view, the American Southwest, where you have a heavy Hispanic voting demographic. It's Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado. Southern California and Texas are what they are. California will still be Democrat, Texas will still be Republican. But those four states, Colorado, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, with heavy Hispanic populations, are all swing states. And Trump got 28% of the Hispanic vote in 2016. I think he gets 40+% of the Hispanic vote in 2020, because these are the states that have to deal with the open border and the problems that have come from open borders policies for the last 20 and 30 years. It's Hispanic working class people, many who are legal immigrants, but these are legally voting citizens who, with the right to vote, say, it's in my best interest to have a border wall and controlled flow from the border, because it's my wages that are degraded. It's my kids in Albuquerque, New Mexico, very close to the border, that have to deal with cartel gang wars in the drug trade, and that my kids going to their public high school in Albuquerque are the ones that might get hit with a stray bullet. So they are very cognizant of these risk points and factors, and they will, in the voting booth, pull the lever for Trump at a higher rate than Hispanics have ever done so before.